But the next show is actually a Netflix original. It's called I Am Not Okay with This. Season 1 of I Am Not Okay with This. Very interesting show. If you're I'm sure a lot of you are unfamiliar with this one because I was pretty much unfamiliar with this one. I just saw it on Netflix. I was like, oh, chick from It and kid from It, the movies. So if you're unfamiliar with this, it follows a character named Sydney. She's a teenager. I'm pretty sure she's, I think, 17, but she's in high school. Her family has moved around, but her father recently killed himself, and she's dealing with a lot. I mean, obviously, a lot of girls that age deal with a lot, but Sydney uniquely is dealing with. She actually has superpowers, like telekinetic abilities, and that's kind of where we kind of start out a little bit, her trying to like figure out if she has superpowers or not, and dealing with just normal high school girl things, with, also dealing with, a hard family life, her dad being recently deceased, recently killed himself, and, dealing with a mother who's kind of having a hard time and trying to keep the family together, and, her just trying to keep her own psyche together, and adding, superpowers to all this. Really complicates things, but so that's what the show's about. It stars, like I said, two child actors. Well, they're not really children; they're teenage actors from the It movie. You have Sophia Lillis; she plays Sydney, and Wyatt Oleff. I'm pretty sure that's how you pronounce his name. He plays Stanley. Funny enough, he actually plays Stan in It too, which I thought was kind of funny. But the one major thing about the show is both of them are incredibly good. It's kind of crazy. It's how good their performances are and how well they both do. I was incredibly invested in both of their characters and their storylines. That's kind of the main draw to this show. I mean, everyone else is kind of like, okay. I mean, whatever. You're kind of likable or you're kind of hateable, depending on what character is what. But those two were pretty complicated and very interesting characters, and I really liked their relationship with one another. I thought that was really cool. But it follows that typical run of the mill coming of age story. It still deals with those cliches a bit, but it just kind of throws in this whole like superpower that kind of muddies all those cliches up a little bit. It is based off of a comic book of similar name written by I think a man named Charles Forsman. So yeah, I've never heard of the comic, but I thought this was pretty interesting. Maybe I might think about it now to see what happens next, because I don't know if it teases a second season. It definitely, I hope, I don't know if they've confirmed they're going to make a second season, because I don't know how many people watch this one, but I recommend this one. I definitely recommend what I described, and if like you watch a trailer and you're like, oh, that looks interesting, definitely watch it. Definitely check this one out, because I'm really glad that I decided to check this one out. It's actually a very short watch. There's 7 episodes, and every episode's around 20 minutes long. I think maybe the last episode might be a little bit longer, maybe be a half an hour, but it's really quick. I mean, I watched it in one night, so it was really quick. It includes a narration. The main character, Sydney, she narrates the whole thing, which I thought was really cool. Sometimes narrations can be a little bit off-putting and weird, and sometimes it's just like deals random exposition that's kind of unnecessary that I can just watch for myself, but I think it added a lot more to the show. A show like this doesn't really work without kind of getting into the head of our main character, because, I mean, she's kind of silent. She's, the quiet type of kid, quiet, weird kid. Obviously, you're going to be that way if your father kills himself and you're dealing with superpowers with that. So, yeah. But, I mean, it definitely comes into play at the very end of the show, and you'll see how. It provided some comedic elements, definitely some, again, makes our character a lot more complicated and a lot more interesting, and I thought it was a good way. I don't know. Again, I'm not unfamiliar with the comic, so I don't know if that really happens in the comic, like a sort of narration by the main character, if that's like stays true to the actual source material. But yeah, I thought it was a really cool touch. It definitely worked here. Like I said, the two performances were spectacular. It's very surprising because it kind of reminded me in Stranger Things in that way. Like these like sort of teenage actors really kind of doing really well, leading a show, when it could go really either way. I mean, especially with these like teenage / kid actors. A lot of times they can be really unintentionally really annoying and just kind of be really poor characters. But I think the creators and the actors do a phenomenal job of making these characters likable and believable and complicated characters, and not just like, dealing with fucking random school problems, because yeah, sometimes it can get a little bit like, okay, melodramatic, and this is kind of just stupid. But yeah, not here. A weird criticism I have of the show is I couldn't pinpoint at like what time period this is set in. Like it kind of has this weird 70s 80s feel to it. Like this like retro type of like classic feel, kind of like Stranger Things a little bit, but not as like in your face as Stranger Things. I also saw a character that had a shirt that said 2009 on it, but then I read something somewhere online that it takes place in the 90s. So it's like, what time period is this set in? I don't really understand. But I mean, it's not really that important to the show. I mean, it's still very interesting. I think just the way the series is filmed and sort of like nostalgic elements to it, kind of definitely it's definitely relatable to me. So yeah, I still really enjoyed it. Yeah, so the time period doesn't really matter too much. Yeah. It's like I said, it definitely sets up a second season. So if it does, I hope they do one, because I'll definitely be here for it. But I don't know how many people watch it. I don't know how big this is, but yeah, I definitely recommend checking this one out, because I'm kind of need to see a second season, because it ends on a big cliffhanger, and I'm like, what happens now? So yeah, check this one out if you're interested. If whatever I said makes you interested in it, it's a really it's a quality watch.